Welcome everybody to the Choral Chameleon Singer Masterclass. We are really thrilled to have some of the most esteemed members of the Choral Chameleon group, part of our family, with us today to talk about the experience of the Choral Chameleon Institute and the lessons that it has taught us over these last 10 years. I'm always humbled to be in the company of these people who are really the lifeblood of what makes the Choral Chameleon Institute happen, what allows it to be as fast-paced and as safe and viable an option as it is for composers to explore new things. As we often say, the Institute is our 8 favorite days of the year, as we do the greenhouse think tank thing with this thing that we all love, choral music. I'm joined today, in no particular order, I'm joined today by Annie Beliveau, a soprano who has also, integrated herself so beautifully into the Choral Chameleon family and is also a composer herself, and pianist, teacher, and somebody who has definitely gone the extra mile for everybody that she meets, really. And we are thrilled that you're here, Annie. Thank you for being here. And I'm joined by the wonderful Liz Hanna, longtime soprano in Choral Chameleon, also a wonderful composer, an amazing, amazing voice, and a presence of great centeredness, of great assurance, and great generosity that comes only from the human heart. She radiates incredible musicianship along with incredible humility at the same time. We love her very much. So thank you for taking the time today, Liz, to be here with us. We're also joined by Matt Robbins, tenor in Choral Chameleon, also composer, editor, aspiring piano technician extraordinaire, incredible jazz pianist. Go listen to his things. They're amazing. And, a person of the highest caliber of musician there is, and who has also shown himself to be somebody full of humility, of knowledge, and of incredible joyful curiosity, which is certainly a hallmark of a Choral Chameleon singer in that way. So welcome, Matt, and thank you very much for being here today. To Brian Rosen. Brian Rosen, also a composer, and sings bass with us often in the Institute, and has also had 4 of his pieces premiered in the Institute out of the last 10 years. 3 of them, the wonderful Google variations, which as we get to it and as it comes up, I'll have him explain more about, and 1, a beautiful setting from the Bhagavad Gita. Brian is San Francisco based, and has also served for some time now on the board of Choral Chameleon, giving his time and his energy to helping us make the organization better and make it elevate. And so he is undoubtedly intrinsically part of our family, and it's very meaningful to me personally to have you here today, Brian, and thank you for your time. Appreciate you being here. Suzanne Schwing. To say that Suzanne is a seasoned singer and seasoned choral singer of the New York scene is the understatement of the century. She's a pillar of our community, and her musicianship in all regards is, as far as I'm concerned, unsurpassed. She has been a steady presence and a very, very honest and loving presence as part of our Institute these many recent years. And now that she's singing with us during that time, I can't ever imagine doing it without her. So she's also part of our family, and Suzanne, thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to be here today as well. we love you very much, and we're so glad you're here. And last but certainly not least, my partner in crime, Kelly Baxter Golding, who is a founding member of Choral Chameleon, was there from literally square one and has somehow managed to stick by all of these years, and whose whose voice and presence and experience lend a certain kind of integrity to our work, an integrity that is not pompous or demonstrative, but that is, again, steady and very comforting to have as a part of our family. Also, a voice, which is the sound that is now clearly a part of my heart. It's a recording that plays over and over in my heart as something that that moves me very deeply. Kelly doesn't know this, but sometimes when I'm feeling really down, I go back to a very old recording of her singing the Laudamus Te duet with our mutual friend Erica Lloyd that was done at my church gig in Brooklyn, where I met her many years ago. And hearing her sing one particular iteration of Vivaldi's Adoramus Te can make me smile even in my darkest moment. So there you go. We're just revealing things today. It's not sharing time, Kelly, but it is time to show you some love, and thank you for being here and taking time out of your busy schedule to do this. So in general, I'd love to start by asking you about your own thoughts and perceptions as a singer and musician about the Institute. You know, this is really a question about what the view is like from your seat during the readings, during the concerts, the people that you've met, certain things. And we'll save space after for specific pieces and memories, but this is just starting with your general thoughts. Maybe if Brian, if it's okay, I'd like to start with you, and welcome again.
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting for me because I came into the organization mostly as a composer who would sort of sing with the Institute as well. And it was sort of this trial by fire situation where it's like, can I do this? I don't know. Can I do this? Man, this is super hard. And yeah, it was super hard. But when you say, you know, the 8 best days of the year, that is just absolutely true. It is such an incredibly rewarding experience and intense and exhausting. But to go in there with the composers excited about these things that they've been working on, and to sort of be in the position to bring them to life is incredibly rewarding. And it's really interesting for me as a composer. I feel like I've grown so much as a composer by being forced to sing all this music, but also to be there, because when you're singing with other people, you become very close to them. I mean, they are your friends. You are vibrating the air around you with these people. And as a composer who's sort of basically writing instructions for what these people are going to do for some number of hours of this week, there's a responsibility there. There's a responsibility to take care of them, a responsibility, because if they sing their piece and it's not fun, you can feel it. And you can feel it as a composer, and you can certainly feel it as another singer. So I certainly remember writing things and then singing it with people and realizing, oh my God, what have I asked my friends to do? And it changed the way I approached writing. I would actually, when I was choosing notes and writing, I was like, is this going to be fun for them? Is this going to be, are they going to like me as a person if I ask them to do this? So it really adds a dimension to one's thinking about what one is doing when one is composing, and it's great to have that from both sides.
That sounds like a very chameleon-esque experience, chameleonic experience. Thank you so much. Annie, could I ask you to respond?
Sure. Yeah, this is the greatest workout that exists for a choral singer. 8 days. And it is also my favorite 8 days of the year, no question. For one thing, you're just sight reading pieces back to back. So you literally don't have time to feel fear or to feel anxiety, because it's just on to the next thing. We're moving on, and 2 days later you'll get the next iteration, and it's this familiar and yet different flowering of the music, and you get to focus on something different. You get to make that crescendo actually speak the way that you'd like it to, and you just kind of get into finer levels of detail as you go. And the composers are right there. If you have any questions, they're right there.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. Suzanne, could I invite you to comment? We want to unmute you here.
There we go.
There we go. Hi.
Hi. Ain't technology grand. So yeah, this is also among my favorite 8 days of the year. And these specific 8 days, it's that I do a lot of new music. So not just with Chameleon, but in New York in general. But I don't often, except for these 8 days, get to have the luxury of being in the incubator with the composer and the conductor and have an instantaneous collaboration. There's the one thing where you spend 5 or 6 days rehearsing it and the composer isn't in the room, and then they come in and they hear what you've already done. Mm-hmm. And that's cool, and you end up having fabulous recordings and fabulous concerts. But the way the Chameleon Institute works in this sense, the composer's there the whole time. So if there's a change that needs to be made, either because they need it or because we need it or because the conductor needs it, it happens right then and there. And sometimes you come in the next day and you have a completely different score, or there are 9 or 10 new pages that didn't exist that first day. So you see the evolution of the piece as you're learning it, and the composer's learning with you as well. It's something that is, see if the COVID brain can come up with the words for this. It's a very, unique seems like a cliche. Everybody says, oh, this is unique. But this really is. It's a very unique opportunity to have that immediate creative process taken on by everybody. And you get the stress of it, you get the satisfaction of it, you get the emotional fulfillment of it, you get the musical fulfillment of it. And sometimes it's a royal pain in the backside. But it's a process that we don't often have access to otherwise. And I think it's one of these things that's absolutely crucial to the musicianship of everybody involved, really.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Matt Robbins, could I ask you to speak about it?
Yeah, sure. I don't know. I guess the first thing that comes to mind for me when I think about the Institute is riding my bike down to Carroll Gardens at 9 a.m, and getting a coffee and going into ear training, and it's like, I do a fair amount of singing, on a professional basis and on a volunteer basis, but this really feels like going into the office for the day to do this job that's thrilling and exciting and fun, and it pushes boundaries in a way, like seeing new music for the first time. There's this kind of mental challenge to figure out what is this composer really intending? Like what's the core of this music? Like what are we trying to get out of it, and what are they really asking me for? That I especially if it's something that's just right on the edge of what I understand. Like we have some composers that come in bringing like microtonal chords and things like this that I'm like, wow, I did what? And I just like that challenge is is just incredibly inspiring. I love that stuff. Like, even if it's hard, it is definitely like an approach of showing up every day and just being like, okay, like we're gonna, like a marathon mindset when it comes to like the actual, physical vocalization and so forth. That really we have to save it and be cautious and careful, and it's a full week, and but at the same time, sorry, I'm gonna stop talking because
no, go ahead.
But yeah, that aspect of intellectual challenge. And
I often find myself saying at the same time something similar, that when we're doing the Institute, I find myself every day wishing that it could be like that more days of the year, wishing that we could do it more. And who knows, maybe we will at some point. Thank you, Matt, so much for that. Liz, Hanna, welcome again. And would you care to share your thoughts with us about this?
Yeah, sure. Echoing a lot of what others have said so far, so there are kind of two things rising to the top for me. One is really, the excitement of coming into the room in the morning, getting this stack of scores on the music stand that has never been seen, has never been sung. It's in process. It has, it's in the works, and being part of that process is so humbling and exciting. It also, over the course of the week, the physical requirements of being able to stay present and focused and maintain any semblance of good technique while you're, churning through this stuff. It's hard and it's so rewarding. There's always a point for me near the end of the week, Wednesday or Thursday, when there's this sort of breakdown feeling, when there's just the visceral process of singing and maintaining openness and maintaining form just kind of culminates in this sort of heightened state of vulnerability, which, vulnerable is also very, very strong. And for me, I don't know, like on a psychological, spiritual, emotional level, that then in turn, not only is something that I run with through the rest of the week into the performance on Friday, but I think is also something that I take with me throughout the rest of the year. I get my dose of Institute in the summer, and kind of like what Suzanne was saying, it's a test of musicianship, and it's a gift to us too as singers, to be able to receive that and participate in that. Something about the challenge and the process is, I don't know, sort of, it's almost like a pilgrimage in a way that we take together, and it's really special, and it's been really great to be a part of.
Well, it's been great to have you a part of it too. And last but not least, my dear friend Kelly, who I believe sang, I could be misspeaking, so correct me if I'm wrong, sang in the first Institute that we did, which would have been many years ago at Hunter College in Manhattan. Were you there when we did the first one?
Oh, Vince, it's been so long since then. I feel
a lot of things have happened since then.
a lot of things have happened, and each institute is so rich and so full of stuff. And looking back over the numerous years I've been part of this, it all it kind of blends together. I think I was there for the Hunter College one, the first one. I can't imagine that I would have missed that.
Right.
I mean, it was so exciting to be kicking off the Institute, which had been your brainchild for some time before that. And you had managed to get it off the ground and running, and we were all like, is this new baby bird going to fly? And it flew. Look at it, 10 years later. A lot of what my colleagues here have said resonates really deeply with me, and I wish I could speak as articulately as any one of them about any aspect of what they've said, but I'm going to say, yeah, what they said. And building particularly on what Liz said, I think the words that come to mind for me when I think about what it's like to be part of the Institute's singing group is, it's words like control and trust and fear, and they all kind of roll in together. See, I like to prepare for things. And knowing what I'm going to sing in advance allows me to prepare, to get my voice into the right place, to know what technique I'm going to have to use in order to manage my energy properly, not blow my voice out too soon, how much to give in what part of the rehearsal in order to make certain that everything stays healthy and we still have the power to pump in when you need it. You can't prepare. You don't know what's going to be on the page. You don't know what's going to be on the next page. You don't know what's going to be on the next page the next day, and all the markings that you made in yesterday's score to make certain you don't make the same silly mistake the next time. Your markings are gone because you got a new score, and so you might make the same silly mistake the next time. And so it's trust in the process, trust in the group, trust in your own technique and abilities, and a relinquishing of the kind of control that makes certain that you don't fall on your face sometimes or make the same mistake today that you made yesterday because the passage looks different or is slightly different. And trusting in the solidarity of the group to get through the tough stuff, and in our conductors to give us the leadership we need to navigate the things that are really hard, because some of what our composer colleagues throw at us is really hard. No matter what you've seen on a page before. Some of the stuff I've sung is stuff like I've never seen on a page before or since. But that Friday night feeling, when we've done our best to bring these things into the light and hold them up and to do justice to what the composers have tried to do for us and with us, that's the best feeling of anything. I mean, I wish every concert that I sang could feel like that at the end. Yeah.
It's interesting to sort of think of the difference between Thursday night and Friday night, and how much trust is involved in both.
The home stretch, it's like the last 10 reps at the gym. It's like you get through the first 5 fine, then 6 is a little harder, then 7 is like 8, 9, 10. I would like to just repeat briefly something that I said in the faculty conversation yesterday, because I want to just say that the Institute happened because of an experience that I had in my undergrad where I had written a piece and I was so excited about the choral instrument, and I was studying with a composer who is quite well known in the choral world, Conrad Sousa, who was really emboldening me and helping me find my voice as a composer. And I had an experience where I had the opportunity for a professional choir to read something that I had written in the presence of my colleagues. I always have said I learned more in that 45 minutes of them interacting with my piece than I did in an entire year of lessons, all due respect to my teachers. But also, I had a very difficult experience during that, because the person who was leading the readings was, not particularly nice about it, and they were quite forceful with me and quite dismissive, and kind of made me feel really embarrassed by the end. And even at a certain point, like, I didn't want to do this anymore. And I was really devastated by it. Although in hindsight, I did learn so much from it, for which I'm very grateful. But as I then moved on to grad school, I realized there's got to be a way to really teach important things about how to write for, interact with, and respect the choral instrument, which I have always said is a singular instrument that's made of people, right? The choir is an instrument made of people, and that to respect it, you need to be able to feel safe. You need to be able to risk things. You need to be able to fall off the bike and skin your knee and know that somebody will pick you up and pat you on the head and tell you it's okay. That's going to happen, but we're here for you, and that's why the Institute happened. And I remember I sat down in a Chipotle in the Empire State Building with Steve Smith, the co-founder of the Institute. And we sat in Chipotle over burritos and talked about what a sort of best case scenario would look like, how much it would cost, how we would raise the money. and I think I can say this for all of us as trained musicians, as much as we learn who and what we want to be as musicians from our mentors, from our teachers, from conductors that we've worked for and with, we also have learned from some of those same people and some of the different people what we don't want to be as musicians and what we don't want our musical experiences to be. I think that's a perfectly fair thing to say. And the Institute represents a balance, I think, of those experiences trying to be addressed pedagogically all in one place. So thank you all for commenting on that. I hope that our listeners, watchers today, can hear a sense of real care and real generosity in the voices of these people, that it's not even just that this is our job and we're being paid to do it, but it's that we're excited to do it, and it fills us with great joyful anticipation during that time, and the culmination of it is really a momentous, very charged experience that really ties people together, ties their hearts together in a way that I've not experienced elsewhere. So thank you for pointing that out. Now, that said, there have been many experiences, and we've all alluded to pieces that, were, had a profound impact on us one way or another. I certainly remember singing pieces that were emotionally draining for me. Like, it took more than just my musicianship. It took all my heart and soul and just kind of drained it out of me in that moment. And I didn't mind doing the work for it because the piece was worthy of it. And I think there's also been a number of pieces that we've sung that there was a lot of work, a lot of hard work and intensity, maybe without the payoff, and that's all part of the experience. So I would invite our singers now to maybe share any general or specific memories about our time together in the Institute. Would anybody like to lead off with a memory or a reference that jumps to your mind? Annie, please.
I think there have been several times that I felt like the job we were doing was teaching composers how to write for singers as singers and not instruments. And I speak from the soprano section especially. I think that several composers have maybe just not been aware of the toll it takes on a high voice to be at the top of our range for pages on end sometimes. And sometimes the piece changes to reflect that, and sometimes it doesn't. And yeah, there was a particular piece that I believe at the beginning had a direction like to be sung with desperation. And it is our duty to sing it with desperation. And we did.
Yeah. Annie, as you're talking, the memory that I have to bring up about you, which is that we've done two pieces now by a young composer, Yang Fan Shu, who, when she wrote the choral piece for us the first year, which was a piece in Mandarin called Fuyo, which Matt Altman conducted, it was her first choral piece ever. By the way, she's moving to New York. She's going to be doing her master's at Juilliard, studying with Bob Beezer there. So we're excited she's going to be close to us. But the piece in question was her piece Qingyi that we did a couple of years ago, which was a dramatic depiction of the Chinese opera, drama. And Annie went the extra mile in taking on the solo in Mandarin, learned it overnight, and spent a fair amount of time on the phone with Yang Fan's mother who's an expert in this, to figure out how to properly perform it and honor the tradition in that way. So that's an example of something that I would call going the extra mile, and a memory of that. So,
well, this was a case when I was especially happy to have the composer in the room, because if I had just gotten the score, I would have been lost, you know. To be able to speak with her and with her mother, who is an expert in Peking opera, was amazing, and I felt like I was able to do justice to the piece.
Wonderful. Anybody else like to share a memory or a thought?
The young fawn example is such a great one, because we certainly talk a lot about creating a positive and supportive environment, but deep down inside, and sometimes it's not always deep down, sometimes it's pretty much at the surface, I'm kind of judgy, and I will certainly have my inner thoughts about what will work and what won't work, and it's been a conscious effort to make sure, like, okay, no, and I've learned this through Choral Chameleon, is like my instincts are sometimes wrong, and that the things that I think are not going to work end up working wonderfully. And so that's been sort of humbling as a performer to be sort of forced, maybe a little bit against my will, to trust these things, and then find out at the end, like, oh, you know what? That trust was well placed. I was wrong. They were right.
So we have been talking, a couple now of us, about Yang Fan's piece. Why don't we take a look at the score and have a listen to it? Just step down memory lane for a moment, if that's okay with you guys. I'm just going to reshare here and share the computer sound, and I'll mute myself so that we can hear this wonderful. And one of the things I love to do is hear Suzanne's wonderful commitment to the sound at the beginning of it. I mean that sincerely from the bottom of my heart. Here is Qing Yi by Yang Fanshu.
I just remembered it's a sort of a tradition among the Institute is after the final concert, we all go out and sort of celebrate. And I remember after we did that piece, the entire Institute went to a bar, and poor young Fan couldn't come in because she was only like 15 or something. So I think me and Suzanne, you were there too. We basically just like hung out outside the bar to keep her company while everybody else was out there. I think we got ice cream.
We did. Yep, we took her for ice cream, and then she was on the outside of this little picture window with bar stools on one side and young, fun, underage on the other, out on the sidewalk. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, it's just all sorts of people come through there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what other pieces and memories stick out in your mind?
With Chingy, there's one thing. One thing you mentioned, the amount of time that we collectively spent on getting the sound, and even it breaks like throughout the entirety of the church, and also Carroll Gardens, you'd hear both near and distant like everywhere. It's just this
Boy, that's a quick way to get somebody to give up their seat on the subway for you.
Yeah.
And not a sound that's called for in the standard choral repertoire that often.
Not usually, no.
Mm-hmm. Now, can I just ask really quick, Brian, did you sing on A Burnt Ship?
Yes, I did.
Those years ago with me? Kelly, did you sing it too? So we had a student come to us, Corey Rubin, who was just about to begin his doctorate in composition at Indiana University. And he had this idea for a piece that would be a essentially metaphorical depiction, choral depiction of what happened at 9/11. You know, we took a look at it, and Matt Altman bravely took on the duty of conducting it. And something that he said, Liz, did you sing in that piece too? Yeah. So something that he said was that, sure, you know, it was difficult to do as a piece, but that it was really emotionally taxing, this John Donne poem, which I'll just put it up on the screen here really quick. You know, basically you're talking about a burning ship and some people out of a fired ship, which by no way but drowning could be rescued from the flame. Some men leapt forth, and ever as they came near, the foe's ships leapt forth as they came near. Yeah,
I remember the summary of that poem was basically, okay, you've got these people, some are afraid of drowning, and some are, you basically have to choose between drowning or dying in the fire. And so people chose, and then the cruelest irony was that the one that they were most afraid of, the one that they chose, was the opposite of what they ended up getting. So it was just a brutally difficult poem emotionally. It's a cruel poem.
This particular, so we were talking about the line between, and maybe some of you'd like to speak to this, the line between something that's just simply very difficult to do versus impossible to do. And this is one of those pieces that really drove right up to the line. I would compare it technically to something like Walton's Cantico del Sole, which many people regard as the most difficult piece of choral music ever written. I don't know if I would go that far and say it, but for a long time, a lot of people thought of it that way. This is something that is very technically difficult, but in its crafting is written in an idiomatic way that's possible. So maybe any of you might like to speak to the idea of driving right up to that line as a singer and helping a composer distinguish between what is possible, though difficult, versus no, this is not possible, I can't do it, because the voice can't do it. But I'll just show the ending of this where, you know, he managed to create this incredible texture where, you know, going off in the glissando, I mean, it was like just the whole thing just melting. right in front of you, you know, into the water. Any thoughts from any of you who sang it about your experience singing this piece?
I mean, I think there are two flavors of difficulty. One is a question of, okay, how hard is it to physically do? How hard is it to get your body to make that sound? And then how hard is it to do in the context of what just happened?
The piece
So,
before it and the piece after it, you mean?
well, or specifically the sound. I mean, like
Right.
the like within the piece, the thing that you just sang will inform the thing that you're about to sing. And so I think preparing the singer to make a sound or to hear a pitch or to go somewhere, that is sort of like the responsibility. That is how you make something which, you know, you can make something that would be normally easy to sing very hard to sing based upon what happens immediately before that sound you're supposed to make, or vice versa. And so that's sort of one of the hallmarks of a thoughtful composer, is sort of how they prepare the singer for what they're asking them to do.
Right. I don't want to put you on the spot at all, but Liz and Kelly, would you like to add anything before we go on?
I think Brian's point is a really good one. A piece like this, both tonally and in terms of the dynamics, the kinds of shifts that we have to be prepared to make are challenging. And like any task, once you kind of get the scope of it, you can orient yourself to it and prepare and kind of, you know, bring yourself through it with that full scope in mind. In terms of the emotional or psychological difficulty, you know, each singer will have the things that for them personally, you know, they would struggle with, and have to be more mindful about how they're bringing themselves to that. And there's, you know, there's music, just speaking personally for me, that you run into all the time. Like, this is going to sound really lame perhaps, but the Palestrina Sicut Cervus, I actually have a really hard time getting through that without crying. There's something about it, you know, and it's not out there depicting this brutal, graphic, you know, scene of mortality and fear. It's not pain in the same way, but you know, the point I'm trying to make is that it's going to be different for each person. Yeah, there are some things that you can learn from a group and prepare for. I think Kelly said this earlier, or some that we have the singers in. I think Annie also said in the room while we're rehearsing this throughout the week. They're gonna pick up on both technically and on all the other levels how the group is doing with this. And I think it was Annie's comment that last year in particular, the 2019 Institute, you know, for example, had a ton of rec that just left the sopranos in that high range kind of indefinitely. And like a composer wouldn't necessarily think of that if they hadn't known that bigger context. I don't know, all of these things, it's a gift to be able to figure them out together and to have that space. There's the feedback and the direction that we can give them directly is really helpful, I think, but it's also just helpful for them to be in the room and feel it. I mean, these are people's bodies. There's so much processing of a lot of the sounds that we hear in produced music these days. You lose track of what it actually takes for a human body to produce that sound over time. Being in the room with it, I think, is one of the greatest teaching opportunities there is.
I agree. I think that you guys had mentioned before about the breaking point, and this is a real illustration of the kind of cause of that. Once you get into the nucleus of the week, that there is a stamina issue that comes out from that. One of the things that we changed in recent years was we shifted things so that our conducting students during the Institute would be using our large chorus as their lab choir, lifting the duty of that off of the ensemble singers. And I'm very happy with that change. I think it's really great. It's enabled us to do more and have more bandwidth to do what we need to do with the composers. You know, and I hope that at least all of you felt the shift in that energy once we made that change, which, you know, I think was an important one. Although some of you are gluttons for punishment and showed up and started singing for the conductors anyway.
I did do that, but I started singing alto.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the other thing, is that you don't know, because we don't know what we're going to get. We might have a bunch of pieces that do this with the soprano, you know, and then it becomes an issue of community. It's like, oh, wait a minute, your piece is doing that, and your piece, and your piece, and your piece. Can somebody like make some room here? Is there flexibility? You know, it brings up an interesting conversation. Kelly, I think you were going to say something.
I don't remember what my point would have been. I think I was mostly just agreeing very strongly with what you just said.
Okay, great. Let's see. Shall we mention any other pieces that stick out in our mind, or experiences or exchanges that we've had with composers during the reading sessions, so on and so forth. I go ahead. If somebody's
There's the piece last year where the guy was a linguist and he invented his own language.
Oh,
that he set the piece in.
Derrick Wiegel.
Yeah, Derrick.
Derrick Wiegel. I don't know. So Suzanne, I hope you don't mind can I share or can
I just lost you, bitch. Say again.
I said, can we share what
I'm here.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yeah. No, I have you.
So I don't know if it's okay to share that you mentioned COVID brain before. So I want to say that we're all so grateful that
it's
you're
real.
okay. Yes, we're like really, really grateful that you're okay, and we were all, you know, praying for you. And I have to say, it doesn't surprise me that you can survive anything, because you're also extraordinary person, very strong.
Yeah, as I sort of melt down into my, yeah.
Yes, but we did. I just have to lean on you to tell the quick anecdote that you told me about when you were in the hospital, and when you came to, and the first, you know, melody that came out of your mouth. Oh,
I lost part of what you said again, but I think you're talking about when I was having the rigors. In the high fever. Yeah, there were all kinds of interesting things. You know, Chris Cuomo sort of describes his brother, the governor, coming to him in a tutu with a magic wand. I had things that were sort of similarly bizarre, or if not bizarre, kind of definitely non sequiturs. And there were tunes of various and sundry kinds that I could hear inside my head, or in the room, or within the fever, or maybe coming down my IV line.
Hallucinations.
Yeah, I mean, you know, rigors are definitely includes hallucinations. And you know, that thing where you're asleep, but you're just under the surface, so you know you're asleep, and yet you're conscious, but are you? Was in that space. And one of the things that popped up for these random snippets of melody and image and experience and language was this piece of Derrick's, where he created his own language. And I wake up and all of a sudden I hear, and kind of like, wait, what am I hearing again? And then the drum, boom, and I'm just like, okay, I'm in a hospital room at Columbia Press. It was just like, okay.
I'm just trying to imagine what it says about your brain.
In one of the later movements,
I'm just trying to imagine that your brain can actually remember text in a different, not even a language that you don't speak, a language that doesn't exist.
That theoretically doesn't exist.
Yeah.
and the the weird thing, like, spoiler alert, later on in the water rights, she dies. She sort of asks the sea to take her in, and I'm just kind of going, okay, wait, which movement is this from? And is this the one where she dies? Wait, no, okay, so this is good. My fever's gonna break now, right?
Right.
It's just like,
So,
yeah.
for a little context for those of us who are watching going, what the hell are they talking about right now, is that we had a student come to us last year who has become very much a part of the Choral Chameleon family this year, Derrick Wiegel, who who invented his own language. And I think the first words out of his mouth in the reading session, I was the one who conducted the premiere of this. First words out of his mouth were, "I'm so sorry." He was like, "Don't hate me. I love you all. I'm so sorry." And I was like, "Do you know where you are, child?"
Exactly. It's like that wasn't even the hardest piece that year. Jeez.
And he
No.
had,
Vince, do you have the 20 pages of appendices to scroll through for a minute?
I was looking for it. I was looking for it. You guys talk amongst yourselves about this for 1 second, and I'm going to try to find it, because I think that it's worth looking at. This just sort of came up spontaneously, so.
This was exactly the piece I was going to bring up as well, Brian, because he came with this fully formed idea that involved basically a piece of choral theater. So he heard about Choral Chameleon as a choral theater organization, and he said, these are the people that I need to bring this to.
Yeah.
How did he find us? Is that true?
I think just on the web.
Was it from Tamar and the River? Is that why he thought that?
No, I'll have to ask him.
I don't know. I did find the packet, so just bear with me and keep talking about it. What was your reaction to that piece initially when you saw it, you guys?
Yeah, that was a moment of terror. But it was one of those amazing things where it was so intuitive. Clearly he wrote it with his ears wide open, and he's also an excellent notational technician, so.
I don't read IPA very well, so I was like,
That's something. That's
yeah. I was
something,
like,
yes.
okay, I'm gonna have to
certainly
have one of my colleagues say these words a few times for me. But
the text was a different challenge, but I mean, like, even the music in and of itself, was sort of tonal, but the opening lick is that really this sort of intervallic thing that's a bunch of tritones and fifths, and it was like, oh, okay, I see what you're doing, but then it was written in such a way that it more or less we got it together, and it worked in the end.
I certainly found that the work we had spent in Mandarin in previous seasons came in really handy for that one.
Yeah.
That's true.
Indeed.
Fun fact, he has at least 3 other constructed languages for other natural elements.
Yeah.
With the water
Right.
language. It's really
Wow.
world. It was so cool to be a part of it.
I'm just searching on Dropbox now. Pardon me for taking so long.
I think
but
I actually have it, if you want.
I have complete packet final. I have it right here. I just have to scroll to it now and find it.
But I noticed in your copy of the Burnt Ship, you had a pre-final version because it had the little section there saying like more music will come here.
Yes,
which is very much
very
like the
typical.
Institute.
Yeah, that's a very typical thing. Oh no, this packet is the packet for the Institute. It's not the.
Wait, I actually have it,
score.
Vince. If you.
Yeah.
Oh, Annie's got it. Okay.
Annie's got it. But I remember I remember saying to him, the thing that makes this okay is that you anticipated beforehand that this would be a challenge for us, and you exhausted every possible angle that you could to explain it, to make it clear. And, I mean, not just the use of IPA, but really there were charts, there was a whole like etymology, sort of made up etymology of the words, and a whole, sort of translation, and so on and so forth. And it definitely turned out to be one of the most unique experiences.
It kind of reminds me of the composition maxim of like, okay, there's two kinds of hard. There's the hard because the music is fundamentally has to be hard, and then there's the hard because you've been too lazy to make it easier.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think for me, the way that feels and that way that translates to the feeling in the singer's body is either one of two things. The former, it's hard because it actually is difficult, but it's doable, and it's been considered, feels like I'm doing a lot of work and my body's exerting a lot of energy, but it's worth it. And the latter feels like I'm doing a lot of work and exerting all this energy from my body, and what do I get for it? Like, I'm not getting anything in return for it. It's okay to work hard and to be pushed and challenged if there's a payoff. I mean, this is New York after all. Like, sure, put me to work, make me work hard, but, give me the payoff, I mean, am I right, Suzanne? What do you think?
Yeah. Again, I'm with the internet. I lost some of what you were saying, but the payoff, the work versus payoff, this might segue into another piece that we may or may not be ready to talk about yet.
Okay.
So stop me if you want me to hold the thought.
Okay.
But one of those pieces where I felt like, geez, we're spending a lot of time on this, and I don't know where this is going. And I've done new music before, but why am I not getting where this is going, and why? What is the why behind this piece? And that was scissors. It didn't initially, it was one thing to be doing a fully realized piece in a constructed language. It was another thing that turned out to be this very intensive sort of theatrical experience. And side note, a piece that I kind of wish we'd been able to do all movements of, because it was so unusual. And then we have a piece where we're not working with a constructed language, we're deconstructing a single word in a language that we're all speaking in the location of this workshop. And I thought, sometimes there are composers who do this because they can, or because they think they're being experimental or whatever. And so that was my initial reaction to this piece as we approached it was, oh God, do we really why are we, okay. I'm going to spend the next half hour of my life singing about scissors. And how do I feel about this? And in reviewing the piece to discuss it in today's conversation, I got to experience it from an angle from which we in the Institute don't get to experience the pieces. And that is as a listener. We never get a chance to listen to the whole. And I will say that the piece really surprised me when I was listening to it earlier, because in the Institute, it felt like it was just a royal pain and I wasn't getting that payoff that you're talking about. And then in the process of listening to it, it actually almost became a mystical experience somehow. There was something otherworldly about it and something ethereal about it. And I was no longer obsessed in my cranky, crotchety, Oscar the Grouch way of, about this, why are we singing about scissors for the love of God? It became a soundscape in and of itself. It became something completely above and beyond this simple word. And it was something that I did not grok when we were doing it in the Institute. I remember enjoying the actual performance of the piece, because I was like, okay, here's some payoff. This is a piece, and I like this piece, but I still don't understand why she had to write about scissors. Then listening to it a year later, my mind just kind of went, whoa, I missed a whole aspect to this.
Well, I mean, I would agree. I would say that I think several of us discussed how we didn't get it. It took us a while to kind of get on board with it. There are two things I would say about scissors. One of the things that I would say is that there was an audience member who came up to me and he said, because it was so hot in the performance venue, St. Paul's is a wonderful space acoustically, but obviously there's no AC. And during the summer that can be very taxing, and it adds yet another variable to the equation of us, singing there. But on top of that, so this audience member said, I don't know what happened, but as soon as that piece started, somehow for me, it felt physically cooler in the room. Like my temperature dropped, and I didn't feel so sweltering hot. I thought that was really interesting. And the second thing I'll just say, and we discussed this piece yesterday as well, because turns out Matt Altman's performed this piece with 2 other choirs since then, and is taking it to a choral festival in Taiwan that he's doing as well. This piece happened because the composer was told by some teacher or some person in her academic sphere that it was, it's impossible to sing the word scissors, and you should never sing the word scissors, and you should never set the word scissors because that's some kind of an egregious offense. And I believe that the autograph copy of her score said on the inside, "Don't ever let anybody tell you you can't do something." And so I think it was, in a sense, it was also a very personal, triumph for her. Let's go back quickly to Derrick's piece, because I really want our audience today to see Annie, let me make you the host really quick. I want the audience to see this this incredible guide that he created. Yeah. So here's the score. And of course there were solos as well. Brian, I think you did one of this. You were part of the,
Yes.
The rituals ended, rest a moment. Yeah, thanks. I think I will rest a moment.
Here's
after
the
this.
color-coded
Yeah,
text,
IPA.
translation. And these include movements that we did not do.
This was the thing that really got me, was the linguistic profile. Phonology, the orthography chart.
Orthography, yeah, incredibly thorough.
I just thought that when he came in with this, and he was, I think, nervous that we were going to be like, what the hell? Obviously he'd never met us before. And the first thing out of his mouth was, "I'm so sorry, please don't hate me." But I think that it would have been a different story if we had to try to figure all of that out with no guidance, written. And by the way, that's something Choral Chameleon has had to do before. They've had to try to predict or figure out what was happening in the composer's mind with very little outward guidance. And that, by contrast, is very frustrating. Very frustrating to do. Yeah. So this has been wonderful today. As we sort of move towards closing out our chat today, I wonder if there's any advice that any of you have, or any thoughts that you would share with, a prospective student who's considering coming to join us. What do you think they should know and be aware of? We've already addressed in our other master classes the whole trajectory from showing up with a piece that you think is completely finished versus a piece that is non-existent, like literally non-existent, not even the text on the day one. So we've addressed that part of it, but knowing what you know as singers and about the ethos, and if I'm a composer who's considering coming, but I feel intimidated or scared, yet ready to work, what would you say to me? And that will be our last question for today.
The key phrase, I'll just pop in for 2 seconds. The key phrase there is ready to work. And whether that means the piece is fully formed or it's still something that's being sketched out, that, I'll leave that aspect of it to Vince, but it's ready to work. It's ready to collaborate. It's being ready to hear what your singers, who are your instrument in this case, have to say. It means being ready to re-examine a couple of the ideas that you put down on the page and maybe drop them completely or change them or let them evolve in their own way. But it's about being ready to do the work. And that's the most important thing of the Institute is the process. Not even the concert is the end result. It's the experience of doing the work in this extremely collaborative and very rare collaborative environment.
Yeah.
So I think probably one of the unintended consequences of this conversation, talking about our time at the Institute and our memories, is, man, I am so sad we're not doing that this month. I miss it very, very, very much. And so my takeaway is, for those of you thinking of whether or not you should come, don't take these opportunities for granted. When they're there and when we have them, and we will have them again, but let's take advantage of them, because they're not always here when you want them to be here.
Wholeheartedly agree. Matt, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I guess, right, if there is one thing that kind of stuck out to me, it's that, different people have different approaches, when they come into sort of how they deal with the workshopping situation. But I don't know, I certainly don't want to point to names, but there's some people that, we get the piece on day one, and we have some feedback, and then that piece basically stays the same at subsequent readings. And I just think, for a student, like, just remember that, like, we have your back, right? Like, we're down.
Oh no.
To try something.
No, it just hit
anything
us.
you want to write, like, we're gonna try to do it. So, like, just throw it at us. Like, that's what this is for.
Right.
I guess it's kind of an echo of what Suzanne said, but
yeah, let's throw spaghetti at the wall, man. Like, let's just do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll echo what Matt just said. I would say to them, bring us your baby. We're on your side. But be ready to listen, because you're going to hear things and there's a lot you can learn from them. If it doesn't sound exactly like what you expected it to, there's probably a really good reason for it. Some of us will talk to you and give you direct feedback. Be ready to hear that too. Just listen really carefully, and know that we're doing our best for you, and that, we're, like Matt said, we're in your court here. We're in your corner, and we want to bring you the best experience you can have, and we want to give your piece the best growth experience that it can have over the time that we're together.
Yeah.
And I would say one of the coolest aspects of the Institute for me is the huge range of experience levels that are represented in the students who come, both in, just by sheer fact of age. People are coming from all different parts of their life, from, sort of direct musical or compositional experience as instrumentalists or not. Like, there's a huge variety, and that actually represents a tremendous amount of opportunity for us, for the repertoire, for the community that's gathered for that week. That is an asset. That is something to be celebrated and leaned into. So if you are thinking about it and you're like, well, I don't know if I really, have enough to bring or enough to offer, I'm not like, come anyway. Like, I guarantee you have something there waiting for you to learn and to be given and received in that space. And it's so valuable. Please come.
Yes, thank you.
Can I jump on one of the things that
Please,
Liz just
yes,
said? You're talking about the age range. One of the composers that really grew the most was actually not one of the youngest ones. It was somebody who attended the workshop 3 or four times, and he's probably, I don't know, late 50s, something like that, when we started. And just the journey, I don't know if I should be mentioning names,
you can
so
mention
I haven't.
his name. You're talking about Ed Thompson, yeah?
I am indeed. Yeah.
And I won't reveal Ed's age, but I can tell you that he is significantly older than in his 50s.
Yes. I mean, we've also had a woman in her early 70s, I think, the very first year I was there.
We had a woman in her 80s with us.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. And then as young as 16. As young as 16.
But Ed in particular, there's this sort of assumption that people at a certain age are kind of set in their ways. And he came in and he was willing to listen. He was willing to listen not only to the feedback we were giving him about his own pieces, but the feedback that we were giving to the other composers. And the development that his writing took from the first year that we encountered it to the most recent one, it's such a huge arc. And it's nothing against his earlier pieces. They were
Right.
perfectly enjoyable, but he was so open to what this institute was offering. And because we had the pleasure of having him in several years in a row, we had the joy of the payoff of seeing his evolution and seeing what the willingness to listen and the willingness to do the work in the institute did for him and for us.
And I will add to that by saying that it won't surprise you to learn that Ed has continued to study composition and musicianship privately with me since then.
Cool.
And I said to him something that I remembered Conrad saying to me years ago. And he came back with a new draft of something that we were working on. And I said, "Goodness, Ed, I have to be careful what I say to you." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "Because you listened." You know, and he's been a delightful human being. And of course, we've sung many of his pieces now. We've discussed the possibility of making an album of his music in the future. He's a wonderful man. I'm glad you brought him up. He's very much part of our family as well. Thank you all from the bottom of my musical heart and from all of us at Choral Chameleon for the work that you have done to usher new ideas into the choral sphere. Thank you for helping us actually teach the broader choral world, which we have done, that it's not so scary to approach this, and that the relationship between composer and choir is a very sacred one, out of which can come amazing things. I believe that we have only but skimmed the surface of what is possible in music. And every day when I think about that and I think about the reasons I get out of bed in the morning, you are among the faces and names that pop to my head immediately. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Those of you watching us today, this evening, this morning, whatever time of day it is, thank you for joining us. If you'd like to learn more about the Choral Chameleon Institute, please join us on the web at choralchameleon.com. As we speak, this masterclass is being premiered as part of a virtual institute this year. And this and the other two corresponding masterclasses with students and faculty respectively are available totally free on the internet so that you can get a sense of what it's like to be a part of our merry band of musicians. Again, I'm deeply grateful to all of you. I remain yours always, and thank you for being with us today.